Hi there, Doug from unSkript. Today is the 5th of July. If you are watching this from the United States, I hope you had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. I personally had a really nice 4-day weekend. I wish Mother Nature had decided that it would be sunny during the weekend and then rainy today. It's actually exactly the opposite, but that's fine. I got a lot of stuff done with my family and we had a good time. It did stop raining just enough on the 3rd, so the fireworks went off without a hitch. So anyway, today we're going to do our weekly live stream, and that's why we're here. So thank you all for joining or for watching the recording later on. Today we're going to talk Kubernetes health checks. If you were here for the live stream last week, I did an introduction into health checks and what they are. I'll do that again really quickly just to walk through what they are and why we built this tool. And then we're going to actually do a couple of Kubernetes health checks and we're going to resolve the issues. All right, so what are health checks? Health checks, I can just make this a little bit bigger here. All right. Health checks are inside your unSkript dashboard. This is available in our cloud version. And what they are is it's a way to build a custom runbook to just run a whole bunch of checks against your infrastructure. And we can come back over here. We can create a new health check and just start from there. And what happens is we'll create one for the video, just video. And inside here, we can add a bunch of checks, and these checks are going to look at your the environment that you select and tell you that if everything is healthy or not. So, for example, we can look at we can do a bunch of AWS checks and create a folder here. And inside this, we can add some checks, right? Can we find instances without auto scaling? Can we find lambdas with long run times? Can we find log streams, right? Can we find idle EC2 instances? Things that might be causing issues, adding cost into your AWS infrastructure. And so when you add these, now you have a health check that you can run. And when you run this, you select your environment. So these are the credentials that we're going to use. And now this is ready to run. We can run this and it'll test these 2 health checks. And if they pass, great, we're healthy there. If they fail, we'll suggest a remediation runbook that you can then run to remediate the issue, to solve the problem. And hopefully, if you were having some sort of intermittent problems in your cloud, this might actually be a way to solve it, right? You could have all of your checks run. It'll say, here's what's good, here's what's bad, and then you can fix the things that, maybe aren't optimal at that time. Okay, so today we're going to talk Kubernetes. I've created a Kubernetes health check suite already. So inside you have a suite. Each one of these is called a folder. You could add an additional folder with like AWS things. So perhaps like maybe your Kubernetes is having trouble because it can't reach an S3 instance that it needs or something. So you could maybe, that's one of your one of the failing mechanisms for your Kubernetes. You could add like some checks for S3 in here as well, so that when there's something unstable in your Kubernetes, you can do all the Kubernetes checks, but maybe also that little S3 check or whatever. Okay, so what I've done is I have picked 5 Kubernetes health checks. And the way you add the health checks is you come in here and you can find there's a whole bunch of them, right? And you can scroll through. If you want to remove them, you can remove them. If you want to add new ones, you can add them. We're just going to go with these. I have picked my environment. So we've rolled out a dev environment with some Kubernetes, some suboptimal Kubernetes deployments, because that was what's a demo without some failures that we can remediate. Okay, so we've got our Kubernetes credentials in here. We've got some issues with our deployments. So we're going to go through that and we're going to resolve those issues as part of this video. What else do we have here? Inside our folder, we could delete all of these. If I do this, all of this goes away. We don't want to do that. You can delete individual ones, individual health checks. You could turn one off, right? You can say, I only want to test these 4, or maybe you only want to test 1. So you could just filter it down so you're only testing 1 health check. If you wanted to test just 1, you could just run that one health check, right? You could just hit run and it would only test this one. It would ignore all the other ones. You could even turn one off and then press run and it would still test it. All right, but it's showing these are all green. Let's look at the settings here. The settings allow you to set a namespace. That is optional. This is it can look for, so these are all, for each one of these, it's looking for insufficient resources. So if it's above 85%, and a lot of them are looking for namespaces. And if you don't supply a namespace, it'll just look at all of the namespaces in your Kubernetes deployment. Okay, so now let's just run it, right? So we've talked sort of what we have here. You can add another folder. You can select them all. You can save your health check. This one is just called Doug Kubernetes because I'm Doug and I'm testing Kubernetes, right? Perfect. All right, let's run this health check and see what happens. So when I click run, what happens is a new run book is created with these 5 checks. And it's going to check, it's going to run each one of them. And if they pass, awesome. If they fail, it's going to say, hey, this one failed. Here's what we can do to make it, to resolve it. So it's created 5 runbooks. It's running all 5 of these runbooks, each one of them just with the health check, taking the output of that runbook so that it can then come in and we can do a resolution. So you can see this first one, all of our services that are running have an endpoint this passed. If we come down here, they all have sufficient resources based on that 85, I think probably % threshold. And none of them have any unbound PVCs. But we do have a couple errors. We do have a couple Kubernetes pods in an error state. And so this one, we can click here to fix. It will suggest a remediation runbook, and we can just run it and resolve the issue. This one has a failed deployment. We have a runbook that didn't deploy properly. This one does not have a remediation runbook, so we will build a remediation runbook to resolve that issue. Let's do this first one. The pods that started up in error, and again, we did this on purpose. We can see that we have job 1, job 2, and test job all failed. And if you see there's this 5-letter random code here at the end, the jobs are still active. So when I delete, what this does is it will delete these Kubernetes pods. But of course, because the job is still active, it's just going to pop a new version of those pods back up again. So let's just, so now we're here. And we can either run the runbook or we can run it interactively. And running it interactively allows you to see the steps as it goes through. We can do it interactively at this point. So let's just go to interactive. It's going to open up your input parameters, right? So we're going to use the same environment. We have to use the same environment, right? With the same credentials. Our namespace is test namespace, and our 3 pods are right here. So now it's going to open up the runbook, and we can walk through all of the steps as we work to remediate this issue. Now, clearly, if this was an emergency, we need to do it quickly, we probably just could have hit that manual run and let it go without opening this up, and it would have resulted faster. But what happened here is it created this new, it created a new runbook, for the Doug Kubernetes health check with the current, with the date and time, and we're going to delete these Kubernetes pods. So the input has run. You can see the input parameters has all of the information that we supplied. And now we're going to we can just run through the steps. Input verification. This runbook can run on its own. So there might be a few steps that get skipped based on whether they're input parameters or not input parameters. And so this one is skipping because what this would do is actually look for all the pods and then delete them. In this case, we're supplying with this pod information we want deleted. So now we can create the list. So all this is doing is it's going to create a list of dictionaries with the namespace and the pod, namespace pod, right? So it's in the right format for that last step. Right, so this is just, a little bit of, moving the data around so it's in the right format. Just because the way it came input, if you look at the input, we have the namespace and then we have the pods. To delete the pod, we need to be able to send in the namespace and the pod name. And then on the second one, the namespace and the pod name, et cetera, et cetera. Step is to delete the pods. And so what's going to happen here is you can see the inputs are grayed out because we're going to iterate. We're going to iterate through this list, and we're going to take, each time we loop through, we're going to take the namespace for the namespace and the pod name for the pod name, right? Pretty straightforward. Right, bud? My dog just fell over. Come on. Here, bud. Here, buddy. You want to go inside? Okay. Okay. So now that we have it, the namespace and the pods set up in this list, we can now iterate through the list and delete all of these pods. And this loop through 3 times, and you can see we've deleted these 3 pods. So that's been completed. We can now close this. I don't need to save the changes. We're good. This is going to bring us back to the health check. What we can see here is these, again, are the ones that were failing. And like I said, they're going to come back. And so what we can see here is if I just reload the namespace list, we can see that its job 1 is now HHBZP instead of whatever this is over here. And you can see it has just been running for 41 seconds, right? Because I just deleted it and it restarted. And you can see that these 3, the 3 that were failing, that didn't start up properly, they all have different letters here, and they've all been going for 41 seconds. All right, so what that shows us is that this health check did resolve the issue. We no longer have we still have failing pods because the job is continually restarting these failed pods. That's a whole nother mitigation, right? We need to go turn off that job. But if there was an error from the pod, we've deleted and they've rebooted. So in most cases, that's enough to get, turn it off and turn it on again. That gets it going. In this case, the turning it on instructions are wrong, so it's not going to work. Okay, so the second health check that failed here is getting the failed Kubernetes deployments. And so what happened here is one of our Kubernetes deployments failed. And the reason it failed is that we told it the wrong thing. In our YAML file, we just put, we gave it the wrong startup instructions. We gave it directions to a container that doesn't exist. And so when it tried to start up, it failed. So again, we orchestrated this in such a way so that it would fail for the demonstration. All right, so there is no remediation runbook here. So let's just build one, right? We'll call it resolve. And I generally like longer descriptions, but we're in a video here, so it's gonna, I don't want to waste everyone's time watching me type this. All right, so this is going to create the runbook. Again, a new runbook is going to open up, and it's going to take the output parameters of the health check. And so we already will have all the details of what we need to fix, and then we can fix it. So we're ready to go. We can now, this action right here is just going to read in the parameters so that we can get those parameters. And we can see that the name of our job that failed deployment is called failed deployment inside test namespace. So what we're going to do here, and that is in a variable, that variable is called check failed objects JSON string. We're going to add an action. We're going to add the kubectl command. And the kubectl command we're going to want to do here, so we're going to again we'll use the service ID. And so the service ID, what that's doing is it's going to use the the environment right here. So this is, we know is going to be the right credentials that has to do this kubectl command to fail deployment in test namespace. Right, and so the kubectl command we're going to run, we can just, in this case, we're just going to, the kubectl command is we're going to set the image failed deployment to the Nginx latest, and then it'll run properly. So, okay, so what you can see here is this is printing out the JSON string. Let's actually just make it JSON, right? So we're going to objects, we'll import JSON, right? And then we'll just, we can print out just the name, right? And now it's in this parameter object. So now if we come over here to the kubectl command, we can make this an F statement. I'll just put a quote at the end here because otherwise I'll forget. And instead of the names, instead of hard coding in test health check as the name of the namespace, because the namespace is actually test namespace, we can actually come in here and we can call it objects 0 namespace, right? And then, close bracket. I always forget the close bracket. All right, and then where we have the name of the image, the name of the image is failed deployment. Rather than have failed deployment, we can just have it get the actual name. Apply those changes, and now we can run this kubectl command and resolve the issue. Here we go. And now we've updated the image, and it will no longer fail while we run this. Health check. So we can actually go back now. Can save this health check. Saving is completed, so now we can close it. I just saved it, so we're good. And now what we can do is we can rerun these health checks. Now, if we remember, this one is going to fail again because it's restarted those Kubernetes pods, but let's just run it again, and this one should come through as check passed. All right, there we go. We've done it, right? We did resolve this issue. We resolved this issue, and then it broke itself again just because of the way our demo setup is here. But as you can see with health checks, I've been yammering on, and we kind of did this a slow way with a lot of explanations. But if there was a problem in your Kubernetes deployment, you could come in, you've already had the health check set up, or even if you don't, you can just pick the ones you need and you can run it and quickly get in there and diagnose maybe some of the issues that are happening in your Kubernetes deployment. We're working hard here at unSkript to deploy these. We have AWS suite, we have a Kubernetes suite, we have some Postgres. We're deploying more and more of these health checks so that it's easy for you as a user, as an end user, working in the cloud, running your DevOps as an SRE, to use them quickly and to roll and to add as an SRE or a DevOps, you can utilize these tools very, very quickly and identify any issues that are occurring in your environment. So again, Doug Sillers from unSkript. We're here every single week talking through different cloud ops or issues that are faced by people who are working in the cloud. Today, we looked a little bit at Kubernetes health checks. Thank you again for watching, and tune in next week. We're going to have another video on another topic related to automating away the issues that occur in your cloud.